She quietly expected great things to happen to her, and no doubt that's one reason why they did. I, Zelda Sayer, was born on July 24th in the 1900s in Montgomery, Alabama, to the prominent Sayer family. My mother, Minnie Sayer, was a housewife, and my father, like the rest of the men in our family, was heavily involved in the government. He was an Alabama Supreme Court justice. I was the youngest out of 6 children in my family. I was named for the 2 characters in 2 different books that my mother read. Zelda, A Tale of the Massachusetts Colony, and Zelda's Fortune. I did ballet, and I liked going to country club dances. I also liked to swim and hang out with boys, but what high school girl didn't? I was formal president in the social circle in Montgomery, along with my friend Talia Bankhead, a future Hollywood star. We would do all kinds of crazy things, like go swimming in skin-colored bathing suits. At a dance in July of 1918, a month after I graduated from Sidney Lanier High School, I met a man named F. Scott Fitzgerald, who was a second lieutenant in the Army at the time. Scott had came up to me and claimed that he was on the verge of literary fame, but I didn't believe him. After the dance, we kept passing letters back and forth with each other because he was called to duty in the war. While we did this, I entertained many suitors because my family didn't think Scott was a good choice for me, and I didn't believe him about that he was going to be famous. In 1920, I accepted Scott's proposal after he finished his first book, This Side of Paradise. We married on April 3rd, 1920 in New York. I was presumed inspiration for the character Rosalind Connage, and I became an instant celebrity. For the first half of the 1920s, the media couldn't stop asking my opinion on the modern love and marriage and child raising. They also liked to bother us when we were out partying, me and Scott. We got a little, we partied a lot, got drunk, and, that's why I'm credited with being the first flapper. On October 26, 1921, I gave birth to our daughter, Frances Scotty Fitzgerald, in St. Paul, Minnesota, where Scott was born. Scott used my reaction to the birth in The Great Gatsby, in which Daisy states, in response to the birth of her daughter, "I'm glad it's a girl, and I hope she'll be a fool. The best thing a girl can be in this world, a beautiful little fool." I influenced Scott's writing, that and my diary, which he stole after our wedding. I inspired most of his female heroines and most of his memorable lines. But all this fame and success couldn't last forever, and we soon went into debt. Because of that, we moved to Paris, and Scott got inspiration for The Great Gatsby. While he was busy writing The Great Gatsby, I became involved with a French pilot named Edouard Jozan. We swam and we danced together. I was in love again. I asked Scott for a divorce, but he just locked me in our house, and I never saw Jozan again. So I dropped the subject. After Paris, we became friends with many other authors, such as Hemingway. Hemingway. Me and him never got along. I didn't like him from the first moment I saw him. Calling me a harridan and all that. In the past months, me and Scott's marriage kept suffering little by little. So much so that one night in September, I accidentally overdosed on sleeping pills. We never talked of that again. And then at a party once, I threw myself down a marble staircase. That really hurt. Between 1920 and 1934, I wrote nearly 24 stories and articles for magazines. And then in the late 1920s, Scott and I's relationship began to finally break down. As I sought for creative outlets besides writing, I began to pursue art and dancing again. In the 1930s, due to stress from my extensive dance practices, I had one of my first psychological breakdowns. I was sent to Les Rêves Clinic in Switzerland. From July 1930 to September 1931, I was treated for schizophrenia. After that, me and Scott moved back to Montgomery, my hometown. My father was dying, but Scott didn't care. He went to live in Hollywood and become a screenwriter. And after my father died, I went back to a clinic. This is where, at that clinic, I completed my only novel, Save Me the Waltz. This recounted me and Scott's unstable marriage, and Scott deeply resented the book, blaming me for the financial burden of having me hospitalized for his inability to complete Tender as the Night. And he also accused me of poaching its plot for my novel, because our novels, Save Me the Waltz and Tender as the Night, is extremely close to each other. Well, after that, I tried to write a musical called Scantalabra, but that failed, so I gave up on my writing. I turned to painting, but that also failed. In 1934, we parted ways, me and Scott, but we did not divorce. I went to Highlands Hospital in North Carolina, and Scott stayed in Hollywood and descended into alcoholism and literary obscurity. While in the hospital, our daughter Scotty was thrown out of her boarding school in 1938. He blamed me. I don't know how it was my fault, though. Scott, he resented me even more after that. While in Hollywood, Scott became a screenwriter and had a relationship with a movie columnist. Her name was Sheila Graham. Also while there, Scott died of a heart attack on December 21st, 1940. I missed his funeral. I was still in the clinic, and I was busy trying to write a second novel called Caesar's Things. Because of that novel, I also missed my daughter Scotty's wedding. She became a journalist. Way to carry on the family's tradition of writing. Anyway, I returned to Montgomery to live in the care of my mother, but then I returned to Highland Hospital for depression and was killed on March 10th, 1948, when a fire swept through the hospital's main wing. My life and books and artwork got more attention after I died. For instance, Natalie Milford made my biography, Zelda, a biography. It was a bestseller and a finalist for the Pulitzer and National Book Awards. I'm so glad someone finally gave attention to my life too. The book made me an artist in my own right, whose talents were belittled by a controlling husband. And because of this, I became a feminist icon. Other stuff such as shows and musicals and movies were written about me and Scott, especially about our life. But something that was inspired from me because of my glamorous appearance was the video game character Princess Zelda in the Princess Zelda video game series. Oh, my life also inspired many books. Also after I died, my artwork became interesting. After spending much of the 1950s and 60s in my family's attic, which even though it was in the attic, my mom had much of it burned because she disliked it so much. But that's exactly when scholars began to examine it. After the examination, they noted the influence of Vincent van Gogh and Georgia O'Keeffe on my paintings and concluded that my artwork represented the work of a talented visionary woman who rose above tremendous odds to create a fascinating body of work, one that inspires us to celebrate the life that might have been. On our graves, it says, this is a quote from The Great Gatsby, and on our graves it says, "We beat on boats against the current, borne back carelessly into the past." It's not just me, but that, in my mind, perfectly represents me and Scott's life.
I don't know if we have time. Are you going to sing that?